Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Southern California housing market update. My name is Stephen Meade with Domicile Real Estate, and it is Thanksgiving week here, Tuesday the 21st. And I want to talk a little bit more broadly about the housing market. And, we're going to go over our normal sort of results that we usually go through here, but I wanted to take a second and kind of pose a little bit more of a philosophical question, and that is, are we simply rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic? And of course, if you're not familiar with that turn of phrase, I've been told that not everybody gets that. Now I feel old. It's basically the idea that a lot of activity is happening, but it's really futile in terms of solving your actual problem, right? Like you can argue about how the deck chairs are arranged on the Titanic, but it is still sinking and you're not solving the actual problem, which is a hole in the side of the ship from an iceberg. And there's a lot of talk about the housing market and things that governments, nonprofits, a lot of entities are doing. And the question is, are we just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic? And we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail. But our housing market here in Southern California, right? Our housing market in Southern California has two big problems. The first problem is we just plain don't have enough housing. Like there just isn't enough, and it doesn't matter how you attempt to slice and dice up that housing. There aren't enough units available. In Southern California, we have, and actually one could argue all of California, we have a second problem that is really probably just as important, but one that maybe we have a little bit more shorter term control over to some degree, and that is we don't have a very efficient housing market. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of impediments in place that keep people from selling homes and things that keep people from buying homes. So what we have happening is you've got a situation where you have the wrong people in the wrong houses. So what's a good example of this, right? Maybe somebody who has been, bought a large home, raised a family. Now those kids have gone and left, right? And so now it's a large home that has one person living in it, right? Meanwhile, we might have a family or a need for space, and they are in a two-bedroom condo, right? There's not an efficient method for people to move from the house that they don't need to the home that they do need. And so we've really got two problems here in Southern California. And I'm going to circle back around at the end, but I want to kind of talk about how we know that these problems are pretty big and that some of the solutions that we are working on, or at least that have been worked on the last couple of years, are really just drops in the bucket. And I think there's a lot of talk about activity and things people are doing, but they're not really addressing those two fundamental issues of the housing market. And I think until we address those issues, we're not really going to see a lot of relief. And you might be thinking that this is primarily relief for buyers, right? Of people getting into the housing market. And while that's true for a lot of them, that second problem is especially acute for people who already live in homes, right? Because they're in the wrong home. Maybe they want to be in a single story property and they're not able to do that right now. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to talk about how do we know that we have that what we're doing is not working. So I see we've got my screen share is deciding to not behave at the moment. So I've got to actually exit out a couple of windows. This latest version of Mac OS is just not very happy in terms of screen sharing when you attempt to screen share on the PDF viewer. So let me see here. I think I've got it all handled. Let's go ahead and see if we can try this again. We are working on the fly. There we go. So now we actually got now we actually have something that's gonna work for us. So let's take a look at our active listings, right? And our active listings, if you look here, one of the things that you will see is you've got this number is not really declining that fast. And that's kind of interesting to me because that's different than last year. Last year, I think we had a worse inventory problem, or we had a worse outlook. But again, like we've seen in months past, here is the issue. On one hand, the shape of this curve is a lot better than it was last year. Inventory is not just diving towards zero as we head into the end of the year. Um, but the problem that we have is, where were we last year? We had almost 8,000 homes under $1 million active on the market. Where are we right now? Around 5,000. I mean, that is a rather significant, that is almost a 40% drop in inventory versus last year. If we come over here, it's a little bit closer in our $1 to $2 million category, but it's really still the same issue that we're dealing with. There were a lot more homes for sale last year than there are this year. And that is a sort of perennial problem. There just aren't enough houses for sale. And if we look here, we see the beginnings of a problem, right? It's not as dire last year, except unless you're talking 1 to 2 million, but you see that the number of new homes coming onto the market is taking a nosedive. This is sellers saying we're going to wait until next year before putting our home on the market. Obviously, this is also, it tends to be a slower week in general, holiday weeks for sellers. But if we look at our new escrows, this is the other one I find interesting. This is going down, but not going down that fast in either under $1 million or a $1 to $2 million category. I think a lot of that is driven by a rather remarkable drop in interest rates that we have seen in the last 30 days. I think that is really kind of propping up sort of this late season demand for housing. And if we look at our absorption rate, that really shows that, doesn't it? Look at these numbers shooting upward, both under $1 million and $1 to $2 million. They are both up over the last 2 weeks. This is very much a sign of interest rates. This is those interest rates drop, and it causes an immediate bump in demand. I'm even surprised by just the extent to which that $1 to $2 million category has jumped. If we look here on our closed prices, now again, remember that these are 2 weeks old, or 4 to 6 weeks old. This is trailing data. We see, honestly, pretty strong price performance in our upper end, really strong price performance in our median, this kind of just under $1 million zone. And here's the thing: for anybody that said last November, and there are a bunch of you, so admit to yourself if you were one of these people. Anybody who last November said, we're going to wait until next year to buy a home, look at what has happened. It does not matter what price range you were in. Home prices are noticeably higher today than they were a year ago. If we're looking here, this is almost $125,000 higher at this upper end. If we are down here, it's a little bit smaller of a number in terms of absolute figures, but these are still pretty solid jumps in pricing versus last year. And interest rates are still higher than they were last year, meaning waiting was not a good move. If that was your plan, if you thought your situation would improve in 2023, it did not. Now, if we look at our other kind of measurement of market demand, look at this reversal of course here. Normally, a rising percent still active on market indicates a less competitive market. That is now reversed course and is heading downward. I think, again, a big part of this is that kind of striking reversal in interest rates. That has really brought people back into the game and looking, at least for buyers. What it has not done is brought back a bunch of sellers. And if we look at our close to list ratio, again, that is holding steady over 100%, meaning on average, people are paying over list price for homes, both under $1 million and $1 to $2 million. That's here in Los Angeles and Orange counties. And if we look at our days on market for new contracts, that is holding right around in this 30-day zone. Again, take a look versus last year when we were over 40 days. Now, I'm going to get to this point, right? If the market is objectively worse this year, and I honestly would maintain that it is, I think you probably were better off having bought last year than right now. Your situation, you have less buying power. If it is objectively worse, why are prices continuing to rise? And I think that's exactly what we're seeing, and why it indicates that the measures that we have are not helping. And that is because our fundamental problem is not enough housing units and not enough housing units for sale and available. The ease of transferring property right now is not there. So if we look at our affordability chart, right, this is kind of an interesting one. And I left this in here because I wanted to do this. I don't know if you can see this. We had this payment index actually go off the charts, and it has turned around and come back down. You can just see a hint right here of it coming back. And I think that faith, right, that these numbers are going to get back closer together at some point, that faith, I think, is something that really is kind of keeping that market moving forward. Remember, markets operate on the basis of faith that the future will be better. And that really can allow a lot of price disparities. And what's keeping this big gap here? It is a fundamental lack of housing. And again, we see another story here. If we are looking at our prevailing interest rates, if you look at our prevailing interest rates, you saw they jumped way up and now they have come back down. We're actually very close to 7% right now, and we were kissing 8%, I think a little over a month ago. So really a big change. Now, I promised we were going to circle back to this idea of things not working. And it's like, what are we doing here in California? Well, we did enact a law that allows anybody who is 55 or older to more than one time transfer their property tax basis and put a little bit of grease in the wheels. I think the problem with that is fundamentally, I think interest rates are holding back some of those buyers, right? They still need a loan and they don't like the idea of taking out a new mortgage at a significantly higher interest rate than the mortgage that they have. In some cases, this may even be more of a psychological problem, right? On a $100,000 loan, the payment difference between 3% and 6% is actually not that big in terms of real dollars. But I think to someone just seeing that number go up as a percentage, that really is a deterrent to making a change. The other issue that we have is that we just frankly are not building enough houses, and we're not building houses in the places that people want to live. So not only are we not building enough, but we're building in the wrong places for that. We have these areas, especially anywhere coastal, right? And so when we talk LA and Orange County, these are, even if you're inland Orange County, I would still consider that coastal California. You're still in that high desirability zone. And there's just not really enough new construction going on. There's not enough higher density going on that's really kind of fulfilling those needs. And I think until we solve those problems, this is the kind of market that we're going to be in. And those problems are not going to be solved overnight. They're not going to change in the next 6 months. We're just not seeing anything fundamentally that changes those economics. So, what's the message here, right? If you're a buyer, the best time to buy was last year, no matter when in history. And if you're a seller, right, I think you might be thinking that your situation is going to get markedly better, but really it's a trade. You may get next year, you might get more for your home, and it'll be harder for you to buy the replacement, right? And so it's kind of an even trade across. So my advice for people is to really sit down and make a decision about what's going to work for your life. Time is the one resource that you really cannot buy more of. So always remember that when you're thinking of delaying a decision. My experience has been that, the most expensive time to waste is the time between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you are all safe and with family and have a great holiday period. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in LA or Orange counties, obviously we would love to help you, and you can reach out to us. We've got contact information down below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and we will see you again real soon.